I think this is my 5th or 6th SimFest talk in a row, and I want to thank Rodrigo and Andrew for letting me do this each year for the past few years. As usual, I try to impart a lot of information, so we're just going to move forward, and this is a real mishmash, so I'm hoping it all works, and we'll see. So here we go, and the name of the talk is Tales from the Indie Dev Frontline. So what the heck is this? What am I talking about this time? So I thought I'd review what I've talked about in the past. I started my talks way back in 2013 for Casual Connect. I did a talk called Secrets of a Moderate Success where I talked about the long tail. And I think I was just discovering a little bit about the sequel effect too. In 2014, I'd noticed the sequel effect a little bit, maybe I started calling it the franchise effect. But in 2014, I talked about clutter as a commodity, that all that mattered, that it was a can of coffee beans coming down a treadmill, and that all that mattered was how soon could I get that next coffee can out, that the shininess of the can didn't matter. Okay, nice thing about SimFest is they were kind enough to let me talk about whatever I wanted to over the years. So the first one was called Knob Theory of Game Design. That was kind of fun. Then I sort of tried to get into almost motivational speaking a little bit, so I switched into things like if I could turn back time and how to succeed at anything, where I kind of made fun of Deepak and Oprah and self-help gurus. Last year I did a retrospective of 10 clutters in 10 years, and over the years, yes, I'm the rants guy. I've done at least 6 rants, probably more, at Siege and SimFest. So this talk. Oh, and I've done numerous panels throughout the years. So, what is this talk? This is going to be 12 mini talks from 12 years and 12 clutters. My next clutter is called, it's called Clutter 12. It's about time, so the number 12 has been on my mind, and that's how this talk started off. I plan to impart wisdom through charts and story snippets. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a lesson that I learned from a Siege a few years ago, Siege Investment Conference. I did not take the advice of the advisors, and I paid the price for it, as my talk was, I enjoyed my investment pitch, but I really sucked as an effective pitch. And that's because I didn't take the one piece of advice I should have, which was lead with the money. So that's what I'm going to do. Oh, sorry, I only practice so much. I am going to tell a bunch of snippets, 12 little things, a bunch of other things, and it's going to be a lot of facts and a lot of other things, but it's up to you, the person who's viewing this, whoever you are, whether you're a game dev, artist, whatever, producer, anyone really. It's up to you to find the meaning here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to translate beyond certain things. Okay, so here's the money. This is something I discovered this year that really proves that my franchise effect that I've been calling, the fact that I've done 12 games in a franchise, is more powerful than the shrinking market. And if you look carefully, the graph below is actually is just my monthly sales from doing this. It's 11 years or whatever it is of monthly sales. And you can see how the peaks, it took me a while to get started, but then with Clutter 3 there, the third one over, that was my biggest peak. And then you can see the peaks have kind of fallen short, even though the troughs have grown. And that shows you that the market's actually really shrinking, because those peaks, if anything, I was getting more marketing a little bit, and those peaks, if the market wasn't shrinking, those peaks would have gone up and up and up. Instead, they're slightly decreasing. However, what's really nice is the top graph, excuse me, is my average monthly sales since the beginning. So, for instance, that first month I had 15,000. The next month, I only had 4,000, so the average immediately dropped to 10 or 11 or 9 or even less or whatever. And then it kept dropping till it was under 4,000. And then you can see that as I release each game with C2, C3, C4, I'd get the peak, the monthly would go up, the average, and then it would slightly go down as the big chunk goes away and I'm just getting monthly things. But what's really nice is if you look at about C8 when I went to Unity and I started getting games out 6 months at a time, my average monthly since the beginning has actually gone up and up and up, ever so slightly. I've never gone back down again. And that's basically from getting the games out in time. So my average monthly income for just the past 18 months, I do believe in showing the money. I mean, I believe the indie world would be better if everybody had to actually show what their games made so that people don't get unreal expectations. Anyways, I've been very lucky, and for the last 18 months, my average monthly income is 16.5, which is really, really very happy with that, obviously. Also, my lowest month in the last 18 months was 12,000, which is, again, that's a nice, I call that the soft income. Even if I stopped doing it for the next year or so, that number would slowly go down, but it means money's going to still come in even if I stop doing clutters. And the last thing is this graph is basically the Clutter 1 monthly numbers. And I just wanted to show that for every time I put out a game, I get some peaks. Now there's some other little peaks having to do with going out to the distributors not quite all at once. But as you can see, not only the peaks, but the troughs have gone a little higher since I've gotten to the Unity. Okay, so that's it for the money for now. I think I might come back to this one more time, but that's it for now. So that's talk number 1. We're done. Oh, wait, no. Man, someday, I'm 63, but my memory will get better. So this is a graph that shows all my games, and it shows from the beginning of the time, and it shows the number of months it took me to make my next 100,000 with the game. So that 21 and the 16 is, it took me 21 months after releasing my first game to make my 100,000. And it took me 16 months after that to make the second 100,000. And really, if you add 13 months to that for almost 50 months, that's what it took to get me, because that 13 months was development of the first game before it really went out. And, that's 200,000 for 4 years of work. So that's, again, not great for me. But I hung with it long enough, and then I started getting the next 100,000 in about 9 months, then 10 months, 8, that middle group. But what's really nice is if you look up the top, since I've gone to Unity and get things out a little quicker, those 100,000 marks, there was 8 months, and then really every 6 months for the last year and a half, Clutter has brought in 100,000. And I'm just really happy with that. And this talk is actually or the rest of it is some of the good things that have happened that have to do with not the money, that sticking around, sorry about that, sticking around long enough gets you. Okay, so I want to check my time. Okay, good. Talk number 2, and I'm going to go quicker now. So the secret of Clutter and the Fast Furious franchises. I noticed something, it was just silly, but I noticed that I think most franchises are similar, and believe it or not, I actually have some things in common with the Fast and Furious. And here's the secret of Clutter, as well as the Fast and Furious franchises. That's it right there, turtle. Because they are neither fast nor furious. And here's the proof. This is the Fast and Furious franchises and how they've grown and how it's gone up and down. And if you look at that really carefully, they kind of died with number 3, and I believe they then retooled a little bit and came back. I think they were more heist-oriented. I'm not a Fast and Furious fan. But if you look, they keep building, and they're building both in domestic and the worldwide, so they're really, by the time 2015, they're, a huge hit. They're now shrinking possibly a little bit, but it's hard to tell. And the next one, could light it up again. But I'm sure those early movies, benefit from the later ones being bigger successes. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is a really silly part, and then I'm going to get serious for the rest of it. Okay, bear with me. Ever since I was 7 years old, I wanted to be a narrator. I met Joe about 11 years ago, and when he first came to Atlanta. And now it's been 11 years later, and Joe received this email just the other day. The email said, "Hi, Joe, and this is a true story. I just found all your emails in my spam folder again. I told you that the invoice will be paid in the May payment cycle, and that did happen. Kind regards, C." And I blacked out his name. The problem with this is it's bullshit. Okay, about a year and a half ago, I tried to start getting money from a Russian company that had distributed some of my games. And they really, really yanked me around. It would take me 10 emails, and they'd finally respond and say, "Oh, it was in spam folder, etc." But they finally paid me. But this is bullshit that he told me they were going to pay me in May. It just finally showed up. And the reason it showed up, I started acting like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, and I sent him an email a day. Some annoying, some snotty, some nice. One I started signing, I think 2 or 3 actually, I signed Andy Dufresne. And I also bugged him in LinkedIn. But they finally paid, so that's nice. But it was a year and a half of me, knocking on their door every day. And that just, So, that's my rant. Okay. Next. One of the things I battle with is how much to try to please the customer versus how much I'm true to my Joeness. And I just wanted to show this, that whenever I can make the case that Joeness works, and it seems that my customers like this Joeness. And the Joeness is things that you wouldn't find in other games. And even though some of my customers hate it, I try to stay true to it. This slide was a slide I used a couple years ago in my SimFest talk, and it was called The Lottery Ticket of Time. And since this clutter is Clutter 12, it's about time, I wanted to put this message in the game, and I did it in the way of this puzzle. And what I love about this is there is no producer I have ever worked with, or boss or CEO, that would go, "Joe, you can put this in the game." This is the epitome of Joeness. It's ugly on some level, but it imparts a message I want to impart, and it definitely rings the bells in my head that no producer would let me do this. And I enjoy doing those things. So anyways, that's part of the lesson. Okay, so talk 5 real quick. Failure is relative and so is success, and I wanted to go through my failures to the point of where I'm owning a little bit of my success. So I worked for someone else for way too many years. I was put on probation on one company. I don't think I worked that well in a group. Anyway, so I did okay, but one problem when you work for other people is if you stay there long enough, you realize people coming in the door make about 20% more than you do. So you kind of have to move on just for that, because it's a rarity where you can get a company you're working for to pay you what you're worth after you stay there a few years, especially when you're just a hired gun. Okay, I did a game over 2.5 years that made no money, and I spent 20 hours of my life per week for 2.5 years at least, probably longer. You can do the math, but that made no money, but at least allowed me to change jobs, so a little bit of success there, and it got me to a company called Interactive Network, which was a little bit of a success. I moved on to another company with a few people from that company, and I got some funny money, and I pissed it away. I spent 3.5 years making games nobody cared about at all. None. Zero money. Okay, but I got lucky, and I got hired by, iWin, and I was still going to be a hired gun, but at least it was my designs. And then after staying there for a while, not happy enough that I made products that made big money. I said, can I do it myself? Anna pushed me a little bit to do that. And I finally came up with a good enough idea. And I did the original Clutter. And even that, I almost didn't do Clutter 2. And then I finally started focusing on the business games, and that helped a little bit, and I did okay. Clutter 1000 was my first game in Unity, which was a smart move, and it had no text, which was a nice little experiment that paid off. It did okay. It proved that I could throw just about anything at my customer base, I think, and they'd be happy with it to a degree, as long as it was true to Clutter. And I kind of proved that the story and text, wasn't necessary. But I then put it back in and so forth. And then finally, I worked up to Killer Clutter, where Killer Clutter was harder than the other Clutters and really maybe up the Joeness a little bit more. And I think it looked better, and I think it started pleasing even producer types. Plus, I'm now at my 11th game, and if you hang around long enough, the distributors start treating you better. So Big Fish actually asked me for Clutter 12 will be a collector's edition. And there's one other good thing that happened that I'm not going to tell you yet. So next. This is how I view success in general. This is a concept called Ikigai. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but basically, it's do what you love, but what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And I use another Japanese concept called Kaizen, which stands for constant self-improvement. And that's all I try to do is keep moving forward. I'm like that turtle. The way I think of it is taking one step at a time towards hopefully more success or more what I want to be. Okay. So now a mini-rant. This is my mini-rant on luck versus skill and Feynman versus arrogance. And we'll start with a quote. Because clutter's the game Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now. I put this in because this is a stupid freaking quote, okay? I just hated it in the Batman movie. I just thought it was so stupid, makes no sense. Somebody please, after this talk, explain this to me, because I do not understand the difference between the deserves and needs and so forth, and it just, especially in context of Batman. And that's it. I'm a critical thinker on anything, and I do like sticky stuff and things that make you think and story, etc. But you have to think it through. Just because it sounds good doesn't mean it is. Okay. This next guy, he's Richard Feynman. He's one of the smartest guys that probably ever lived. He was a physicist, and I read both of his autobiographies, and he talks about the fact that when he talks physics, his brain sort of goes off. And he always challenged people like the big scientists like Einstein and Bohr and so forth. And they actually thought well of him, even though when he was much younger than him, because he spoke his mind. And I put him in there because I know I come across as arrogant at times because I think I tell the truth about what I see in the game industry. So, when everybody's chasing mobile, it's not the way to go if you can't be seen, And I've had some success, some more success recently, but I admit there's a lot of luck going on. I took a good idea that was good enough and I sort of ran with it. So I think a lot about the difference between luck and skill, because I've always said that, that's the problem. People that don't understand the difference or mistake the difference, get lucky, get some success, and then they screw themselves over because they think it's more their own skill than it is. So anyways, for luck, I'm going to acknowledge my own privilege. I'm an old white male, and I've had a privileged life, and that's helped. I have a good work ethic because of the way I was raised, and that led to the core trait of my confidence, I think, in general. I have a bad left eye, which is total luck. I put in 10,000 hours because I'm diligent, whatever, and I think that has led to my love of math over the years. And then there's just a bunch of other things. I fell in love with computers 2 years after college. That was a lucky thing. I was lucky to get to Interactive Network. I was lucky to get the funny money. I think I've been lucky to work for iWin and Anna coming to Atlanta, and we're both coming to Atlanta, and the community here is just great. And I think that's helped to fuel what limited success I have. Okay. But I'm also perseverant, self-aware, tenacious, and I do believe in Kaizen, which I'm not even sure I'm saying that right. And all of this, my core traits of love of puzzles, logic, love of reading, love of learning, all that adds into this. And I do love the community, even though at times I still feel like I'm a puzzle guy trapped in the gamer community here. So, okay. It's a matter of perspective. I am currently in the middle of the stock. You are always in the middle of your own story. That guy in the middle there, he's Morpheus he's the Sandman from Neil Gaiman's work. And Neil Gaiman's work is just a wonderful piece about why we need story. And I'm a big believer in that. And you are the architect of your own story, one way or another. And I constantly think of that when I review my life and where I'm at and so forth. Okay. When one door closes, another opens. I told you the market's shrinking. I think Big Fish is shrinking more. And just as I was starting to, anyways, Gamehouse come along, and I want to tell Gamehouse's specific story. It took me Gamehouse refused to put Clutter 1 on their site, even though it was doing well over at Big Fish and it did well at iWin. They just refused to put it on their site. And they took 2 late. In fact, I think I was a little snotty in an email after they rejected Clutter 1. I then apologized to somebody in person at a GDC. And a few months later, they finally took number 2, even though that was later. And even though they took 2 and it did okay, they took 3, they still wouldn't take 1. 4, 5. 5 did really well. And I think they had a little change. And they finally took number 1, called it Original Clutter. And that's exactly the same time they decided to give me my own Clutter series on their front page that's always been there now. And that's just great. And in fact, that's when I started saying, I really created a subgenre of Clutter games, and there started to be people doing their own versions of Clutter, even one called Shopping Clutter. And then I did 6, 7, and 8. And Jeff says Big Fish was really, my money from there was really cutting back. They offer me exclusive for them, which means I go out for them for 1 month for a royalty bump that ended up being slightly more than what I lost from Big Fish. So that was really nice. And then I did 9, 10, 11. And then they asked me something else, which I'm saving for now. Okay. And that is my favorite chart lately. That is the Gamehouse per monthly, what I made from Gamehouse. And that is really a sweet curve up there. You can definitely see the 3 sections. But that last section is really nice, and there's no reason to believe, that's going to change. And that's all because I do them an exclusive month. Okay. This rant I'm almost going to skip. I'm going to just quickly say that I spend way too much time, I think, thinking about success and how it changes you and what is genius and what isn't and what is hard work. And all I have to say is Elton is twice as productive as Billy, but Billy Joel's songs per album denser that I like. I love some of Elton's stuff, but there's highs and lows, whereas Billy's always really solid. And Billy I think of as a less talented. He would probably shoot me if he, knew me and thought, realized I thought this. But Elton, I think, is just a genius, a musical genius. Billy just seems to be a hard worker he's more like what I think I am. I mean, I think I'm just a hard worker with the Clutter. I don't think it was a genius idea to begin with. And I think there's better programmers, they're better software engineers, they're better games, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and another quote from Batman. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Another just bullshit quote. I understand how it applies to Harvey Dent and so forth, but it doesn't apply to everybody. Yeah, I think of Elton and Billy, and yeah, you get older as a superstar, you start being a jerk on some level because you start believing your own press or your shit doesn't stink or whatever. But I don't think that has to be the path. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, the glass of water. A couple talks ago, I talked about the glass of water. I'm going to check my time here. Oh, good. We're in good shape. And I said something to the effect that when you're 7 years old, you make a choice about this glass of water that sticks with you for the rest of your life and you don't even realize it. And that choice had to do with basically, is it half full or half empty? I kind of implied that, if you can rethink that choice and really reevaluate it or reevaluate every time you run into it in life, you'd be better off. And I'm kind of an optimist, but I'm a realist. So to me, that glass of water is just a glass of water that you can use to, quench your thirst. You can put it on flowers, etc., etc. You can splash somebody in the face with it, whatever. But it got me thinking about something else too. That whatever you observe or whatever you take in, there's some truth you see in the world, but there's also a lot of lies. And I think part of this has to do with the political situation the last 5 years or so, and I believe in critical thinking and so forth, but there's something really interesting about even your memory that not everybody knows. But I believe it's a scientific truth that every time you access your memory, you alter it slightly. So your memory is not really the truth. It really isn't. And eyewitnesses are unreliable, etc., etc. But what's more powerful than even truth or lies, it's a little bigger and it overshadows both of them, is the story you tell about anything, whether it's about yourself or someone else or an event. And every time you tell it, you change it a little bit. But that story affects who you are. And that's really the glass of water. You told yourself that water was half empty, or you're a pessimist, and you tell yourself a story that, either people are jerks or not jerks. You make up something that's not quite true and you tell yourself a story about it. And a lot of it happened when you were 7 years old. And, you should learn to figure out how to reevaluate some of your beliefs. That's all I'm saying. Okay. It's going pretty good. But it's going to get a little bit more to go. Okay. So the future of clutter. So that's clutter on a PC. And for years, people said, go mobile, go mobile, go mobile. About 3 years ago, I got into an arrangement with an agent who tried to sell me to bigger companies to possibly either buy out Clutter or help me take it to mobile or whatever. Because I said, no way I can get seen in mobile without some help. And, but I'm the turtle, so I go slow. He didn't, he tried, but after a year and a half, I finally let him go because I didn't want to be tied if I started, found something on my own. About a year ago, I got lucky, and iWin came to me, and they ported Clutter 8, Clutter 9, and Clutter 10 to mobile, but the catch was they did it for a subscription service, their own subscription service. So most of my fans didn't want to pay $9 a month just to play Clutter. And I made a few extra bucks over there, and it was nice, but they're not in the App Store still. You still can't just buy them. It was the full game, which is nice, but you can only get them through the subscription service. Well, I had that question mark a little while ago about Gamehouse, but shortly after 11 launched, they came up to me and proposed that I do a real Clutter mobile. And this is the formal announcement. I think I've told some people. But the nice thing about this is this will be sold as a premium, but it will also have in-app purchases and a free mode, for people, a free-to-play version that for people that don't want to buy the whole game. And I think Gamehouse is big enough and going to do it right that I'm very, very excited. And we'll probably do a soft launch sometime in July or August. And I just keep working on the PC side, and they have produced this, and they've even, I'm even thinking, what's Clutter 12 and 13 going to be like, and should I do a version that's really, man. This was the key talk moment in a talk from a couple years ago. And I still believe this. And I think if you really grasp this and the water thing, yeah, I'm not going to change your life, but I think you can figure out how to be happy if you really understand this. So this says everything you do is in preparation for a future path that you can't predict. And I really should have hammered that home when I did this slide, because it ties into the next slide that I'm going to go to. But the point of this is, again, is I had a concept that was this, that, when you have a free time as a kid, and I think I knew this at 7 years old, I would use my time going, I know I can have a better future if I, read a book or improve at something or learn a new skill. And I was pretty happy as a kid, but I knew that wasn't where I was going to end up. And instead of always just watching TV or slacking or whatever, whenever I had free time, I used to think of it as leveraging my present for a better future. That's what I did. And the analogy here is I called it the lottery ticket of time, because that's what you're doing. Every time you invest in something, you don't know which one will pay off, but something eventually will, or at least, whether it's small or large or whatever. It's better than choosing the other path, which is happy in the moment, which is possibly the path of addiction for some people, or obsession, or there's people that spend their whole high school, just doing sports because they think that's going to take them somewhere. But of course, unless you're the one in the million, sports isn't going to take you anything, once you're out of high school. There's so many other choices. So this was, again, just the realization that even at 7, you could improve yourself that wasn't worth anything right then, but was probably going to be. So I'm going to jump forward. I went through this talk so many times, you'd think I would know it better. Okay, there we go. Glass of water. Story. Doom, 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 doom. The future of clutter. Okay. So what is the future of clutter? Who the hell knows? Because everything I do is in preparation for a future path that I can't predict. Now, if there was a length of time between that and the last slide, maybe it would have worked. But that's all I'm telling you is I don't know. I have no idea. I keep doing the same thing, which is I am that turtle again. So in tribute to Michelle Menard, who was my closer at all my rants, I decided to do my rants, close this with a rant having to do with the bad reviews I get all over the years. Let me check time one more time. Good shape. These are the 12 of the worst reviews from, one per game. So the first one's from Clutter 1 and so forth. And I'm going to be a little snarky. I don't know if you've seen the IKEA guy, but you should look him up. The IKEA, if you look up IKEA snarky guy, I think you'll find him. And I don't have that boom, boom, boom music, but I'm going to get a little snarky in my return. And I love my customers, even the ones that hate my game. Excuse me. But I also hate illogic and stupidity and other stuff. So I'm going to get snarky for a minute and get this out of my system. Okay, the bad reviews. Number 1, I'm sorry I bought this game. Well, you know what? Me too. I'm sorry they freaking bought my game too if they hated it that much. And, bothered to make, go and put the effort through to give me the 1-star review. Why don't you just, if you hate the game, just stop. 2, I am a huge fan of HOG games, but this was awful. Valid, that's fine. I don't have anything snarky for that one. Who is the void, and most of all, who cares? This one I loved because it's snarky, because the game was called Clutter 3, Who is the Void, and they used that and against me. And I think this one's funny. So, okay. 4, the absolute worst sort of junk pile ever. I love superlatives. I was the absolute worst. I love that. I love that. Give me a break, really dumb, not for me. And that was my best-selling game ever. They hated it. Number 6, there's something about these clutter games I just don't like. And yet, they're playing the 6th one. Annoying personal information. Yeah, and this was on the game that actually told the story about how I became the clutter guy. because I told a snippet of my life for every year of my life and how I became, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have done Clutter. So it was even worse than my other games when it came to the personal information. But somebody hated it, of course. 8, I am not smiling. This is the worst of them all. Another superlative, I like that. But I am not smiling. I just want to say thank you for sharing. I made somebody not smile, and they bothered to log in and give me a review. 9, it is mindless repetition of finding pairs. Sorry, I bought it. But he's right. That's what clutter is, and some people love it. And I won't say it's quite mindless, though. I think the first couple levels are, but then it's not. So I don't know how many levels he played, but, he's not that far off the mark. But I think it still is challenging for some people. 10, I was ecstatic when the demo was over. So this guy played Clutter for either 30 minutes or an hour. And he hated it, but he kept playing it. Was he hoping it was going to get better? I don't understand why he didn't just, this is a stupid game and stop. But no, he had to play the entire demo, waste 30 minutes or an hour of his life, and then decide, he's happy because it's over. Worst game I have ever purchased here, and I like Clutter games. This one I kind of like because, again, the superlative, but what's really funny is when he ends it with and I like Clutter games, my guess is he's talking about the rip-off shopping Clutter games that really, really suck. But apparently this guy likes them, and then he hit one of my real Clutter games, and it blew his mind. Okay, moving on. Wrapping it up. Every day I do the following. I reply to any customers' inquiries immediately. I play whatever Clutter levels I enjoy or am working on. I fix most outstanding bugs as I notice them. I check my to-do list and work on what I feel like doing, whether it's coding, refactoring, puzzles, process, Kaizen. That means improving, software engineering, making my life easier for the next game, etc. Art, music, story. I keep in motion any open correspondence with distributors. That's important. For the first 3 months of a new game, I code new mechanics. I then spend a week or more locking down what the game is going to be, and then I start moving towards that. I shoot for a game every 6 months, give or take. I am the curator of Clutter. If I don't do it, it doesn't get done. And I work basically only 8 to 10 hours a day most days now, and 4-ish on weekends. But I'm the turtle. I still just do a little bit anytime to keep moving the next game out the door. Really, that's my story. I'm just a turtle using Kaizen to reach Ikigai. And Kaizen is, again, constant self-improvement. One of my customers wrote this about the game. You know what you'll get with each Clutter game. It's always the same, yet each game is always different. That's the magic of the Clutter series. Oh, good shape. Okay. So I wanted to end this quote by one of my customers made me decide to make one last little change. And again, think of incremental improvements, just constant, self-improvement or whatever. To my website, I decided I wanted to come up with one sentence that described each game, and I ripped off Friends. The notion of all Friends episodes are named with the one with, there's the one with the lobster, the one with the turkey dinner, whatever, right? The one with Ross doing something, etc. So I came up with this. The one that started it all, that was Clutter 1, the one with all the dragging, the one with all the blockers, the one with too many mini-games, the one with the caves, the one with the girls, the one with more Joeness, the one with no text, the one with hover help, the one about the other ones, and the one with the white blocks. Again, I want to close with this. It's a matter of perspective. I stuck with a good enough game and good enough idea long enough, and it's brought me to where I am now. I'm going to do a collector's edition. Last game, Big Fish gave me the banner for the first time ever, and I don't know if it's because customers are leasing the space, which means maybe some developers are too. So maybe some of the more high-end AAA casual games aren't there anymore, so they can give me, more advertising stuff. Who knows? But it led to this. It led to a very excited about mobile because it's something I couldn't do on my own. And 2 or 3 years ago, I asked Gamehouse if they were interested because I knew they did mobile on the side, and they said no. But 2 years later, I'm still around. Boom, they come to me and say, we'd like you to consider this. And I thought it was great. Okay, so with data and charts, I can show that the franchise effect for Clutter is more powerful than the market decline and that I've built a truly sustainable business. Although I could relax a bit, I am the curator of Clutter. And that story, my story, is still only just beginning. I am currently at the end of this talk. You are still in the middle of your own story. And that's it. Done.
Joe, but we're almost at the end of SimFest.
What?
We're at the end of your talk, but we're almost at the end of SimFest and still in the middle of our stories.
This is true.
So thank you very much. Great stuff. We've got to get you to give us subtitles for all of your SimFest, Siege, and GGDA talks now until we get to the one with the white blocks. No, the men in the white coats who come to take us all away. Ha ha, hee hee ho.
Yes, and show up for pizza tomorrow in the park.
Pizza in the park, Mason Mill Park, off of I-85 in North Druid Hills. Joe, not letting you get away this easily. Now, after all of this, you still did ignore one part of your secret sauce, which is you are the puzzle guy. And it is really hard to have puzzles feel innovated after 2 games, much less 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, etc., etc. So you can't just ignore that part of it. Yeah, your fans may say that they know what to expect, but you're still giving it to them in a fresh way. So how do you explain that?
It's just having fun exploring the puzzle space. And man, yes, I think I'm talented in that area. I think I understand randomness a lot better than some people because of my experience over the years. However, I know there's Ben Berg, Kardik, they put me to shame with their puzzle ideas and their creativity. I took one idea and basically have explored it to death. I do know what I'm doing for the next 2 Clutter games, but it's only because I'm in Unity now and I can do things differently in I can do things in Unity that I couldn't even do before, right? You're always handcuffed by what you think you can do. And for me, it's always the more bang for your buck. So I think I've talked about this before, but so in Clutter 2, I was like, well, what is Clutter 2 going to be? And I looked for different variations. But there's 2 types of variations. There's a variation that is just a new thing, and it's a new corner, and that's what it is, right? Like Split in 2 is a variation. Match 3 is a variation on Match 2. But there's a different kind of variation that works with all prior variations, such as dragging, right? And how I pack it or whatever. So I had things like, fuzziness, black and white, split in 3, that all existed in one. But the nice thing about coming up with dragging and trying to make it fun was that applies to anything. It can be a dragging match 3. It can be a dragging split in half. It can be a dragging black and white, And that's the variations I look for. And then, as I got further and further into it, I look for variations that are more, that are independent of either object set and or that they have their own content generators. Like I have the ability, there's a picture right here, third down on the left, that's basically, I can take any picture and cut it up into clutter pieces, and it makes a great game, and I don't need a new object set because every picture is its own object set. So I think it's just loving it. I mean, it's spending time on this. It's as opposed to spending time on something else, right? I think that's all I can tell you. So,
all right, I just know that most game devs have a hard time filling one game with decent puzzles, much less making it survive a franchise for this long. So I think you got to dig into that one some more.
Well, again, I also listen to my fans. And then again, some of it is like, Unity let me put motion in the game, and that's lasted for 3 or 4, It's variations within variations. And I think it's from reading puzzles all through the years, because that's what puzzles are, right? There's not just Sudoku, there's Ken, there's Sudoku with Tetris pieces. There's variations all over the place, and I've done a lot of puzzles in my life.